Welcome to EPG Patashala. I am Shanti, visiting faculty, Vivekananda Institute for Leadership Development, freelance social science researcher based in Mysore. This module is part of the Education and Society course. Here we are going to learn about Rabindranath Tagore's philosophy of education and its social implications. Rabindranath Tagore, recipient of Nobel Prize for Literature in 1913, is internationally known as a great poet. He was born in the year 1861 in Calcutta, the then Bengal. His mother was Sarla Devi and father Maharshi Devendranath. From his earliest days, Rabindranath grew up in a house where all the emerging changes in the Indian society were flowing around his daily life. In Bengal, this change, more often known as Renaissance, found expressions in three great movements: religious, literary, and national. All the three movements found their presence in Tagore's family. Tagore himself started writing poems at an early age of 8, and at the age of 13 his poems were published in a Bengali monthly magazine, Bharati, under the name Banu Simha. We know Tagore as a great and as a unique educator. Tagore did not have any academic degrees in education, but he was a great educator of his time. He not only advocated changes in education, but practiced them in his school at Shantiniketan. Tagore's educational theory found practical expressions in his school at Shantiniketan. The aim of Shantiniketan was neither ascetic nor revivalistic, but integrative in nature. Now let us understand the philosophy of education as propounded by Rabindranath Tagore. Tagore laid great stress and emphasis on the aesthetic development of the senses in his philosophy of education. He argued that development of the senses was as important as intellectual development. He therefore gave prominence to music, literature, art, dance, and drama in the daily life of the school. Tagore believed in an all-round development of personality, and in his institution, education continues to address the all-round development of the students. Tagore's theory of education is marked by naturalistic and aesthetic value. He believed that the widest road leading to the solution of all our problems is education. Education can develop a new pattern of life which culminates in the realization of universal man. Tagore's system of education lays emphasis on the intellectual, physical, social, moral, economic, and spiritual aspects of human life by which a man can develop into an integrated personality. Tagore believed that along with education, economic upliftment is also necessary, since economic life covers the whole width of the fundamental basis of society, because its necessities are the simplest and the most universal. He suggested that educational institutions, in order to obtain their fullness of truth, must have close associations with this economic life. Our universities must not only instruct but live, not only think but produce. Aims of education according to Tagore. Tagore's views on education and its aims are reflected in the goals of Shantiniketan, an educational institution founded by him. The aims of education according to him are as follows. Firstly, self-realization. Self-realization is an important aim of education. Manifestation of personality depends upon the self-realization and spiritual knowledge of an individual. Secondly, intellectual development. Tagore also greatly emphasized the intellectual development of the child. By intellectual development, he means development of imagination, creative free thinking, constant curiosity and alertness of the mind. Children must be free to adopt their own ways of learning, which would lead to all-round development. Thirdly, physical development. Tagore's educational philosophy also aims at the physical development of the child. He gave much importance to a sound and healthy physique. Fourthly, love for humanity. Tagore held that the entire universe is one family. Education can teach people to realize the oneness of the globe. Education for international understanding and universal brotherhood is another important aim of his educational philosophy. Next, establishment of relationship between man and God. Tagore noted that human beings possess different qualities and potentialities that are bestowed by God. He stressed on freedom as another important aim of education. Freedom, according to Tagore, is an integral aspect of human development. Education is a personality-building process. It explores the innate power that exists within all human beings. It is not an imposition, but a liberal process that provides utmost freedom to individuals for their all-round development. He says, education has learning only when it is imparted through the path of freedom. He stressed on mother tongue as the medium of instruction. Tagore very strongly believed that the language is the true vehicle of self-expression. People can freely express their thoughts in their mother tongues. Tagore has emphasized that mother tongue must serve a medium of instruction for a child's education. He laid stress on moral and spiritual development. There must be an adequate provision for the development of selfless activities, cooperation and love, felt feeling and sharing among the students and educational institutions. Social development to him was another important aim of education. Every human being must develop social relationship and fellow feeling from the beginning of one's life. Education aims at developing the individual personality as well as social characters, which enables them to live as worthy beings in society. It emerges from an understanding of the goals of education as enunciated by Tagore that he stressed on the emancipation of the soul more than the body or mind. For us to maintain our self-respect, which we owe to ourselves and to our creators, we must make the purpose of our education. The fullest growth and freedom of soul is what he kept on saying. For the attainment of this aim, he emphasized on intellectual, physical, moral, and social development of an individual. In many works of Tagore, he has discussed what, according to him, ideal education ought to be. He refers to ideal education as one that covers an ideal atmosphere, institution, teacher, and method. While discussing Tagore's educational ideas, Alex Aronson noted that the perfect education given to a child should therefore be like the perfect poem, self-contained, unified, and controlled by the ever-recurring rhythm of natural growth from childhood to adulthood. To Tagore, it was not the formal method of teaching which was the most important part of an ideal education, but it was the environment which surrounded the education pattern. Similarly, an ideal institution in Tagore's view should provide children with the first important lesson of improvisation and with constant occasions to explore one's capacity through surprises of achievements. There is no place for constant imposition of ready-made ideas and knowledge. Tagore noted that ideal education can be imparted only by an ideal teacher. According to Tagore, the greater part of our learning in school has been wasted because for most of our teachers, their subjects are like dead specimens of once living things with which they had learned acquaintance, but no communication of life and love. The teacher who merely repeats bookish knowledge mechanically can never teach anything that can never inspire, and without proper inspiration, independent creative faculties can never develop. Thus, true education, he asserts, develops the power of self-reliance, the ability to do without materials and machine. According to Tagore, books make the mind lazy. For the first 12 years, he said, we must educate the child's mind along the line of its own natural tendencies and instincts, and only then at 12th year introduce the books. He never believed in compulsion, but tried to give the best side of human nature a chance to show itself. Everything in the school he left to the initiative of the pupils, though they were always in close touch with their elders. The primary object of an institution should not merely to educate one's limbs and minds to be in efficient readiness for all emergencies. Tagore's experiments with educational theory and practice can best be seen in his school. Tagore's educational theory could find practical expressions in his school at Shantiniketan. In December 1901, an experimental school known as Brahmacharya Ashram was started by Rabindranath with only 5 students on enroll. The founding of the school was part of the education in fullness. Beginning with his own unhappy memory of school, which he described as a blend of hospital and prison, he concentrated on children and emphasized creativity, the need for atmosphere and natural surroundings. The aim was neither aesthetic nor revivalistic, but integrative. Life in the midst of nature, he believed, equips each pupil to imbibe the values of appreciation of the nature around itself and sustains co-living and respect for multicultural components of human society. The learning was based on self-experiencing of the universe around us and drawing intensively from it. In the play hours in the evening in his schooling method, each student had to spend in storytelling, watching the stars, singing and performing plays. These songs and plays most of the time were encouraged to be written by students themselves. Learning was made fun and the choice of the child. This approach to learning helped many students to come to his experimental school rather than discontinue. The idea of establishing a center of learning where not only the East but the whole world would meet in cultural communion took a more definite shape with the establishment of Vishwabharati. Vishwabharati, an international university seeking to develop a basis on which the cultures of the East and the West may meet in common fellowship and motto, where the world makes its home in a single nest. Vishwabharati as a whole aimed at establishing a living relationship between the East and the West, promoting interracial amity and intercultural understanding and fulfilling the highest mission of the present age, the unification of humankind. Any description of Vishwabharati is incomplete without Sriniketan. Tagore believed that an important part of the work of a university should be to gather accurate knowledge about rural conditions, their practices related to various aspects of life in general, and agriculture and economy and social issues in particular, and also their tribulations related to the life situations. He wanted the knowledge acquired by the students and research groups be used to solve the issues and problems faced by rural communities. To Tagore, the word Shri in Sriniketan stood for prosperity. The name Sriniketan therefore reveals Tagore's hope to make it a center where rural development related knowledge would be developed based on the inputs at grassroots level, and also to bring more authentic scientific knowledge to rural communities so that the lives of these people could be more meaningful, thus leading to prosperity and welfare of villages. Sriniketan was started with two main objectives. First, to understand the economic and social needs of the cultivators, and second, to extend the scientific knowledge available in areas like health, education, agricultural practices, animal husbandry, and craft. Accordingly, the activities of Sriniketan were organized under 4 departments. They are agriculture, including animal husbandry; second, industries; third, village welfare; fourth, education. The unified program was given the name of Institute of Rural Reconstruction. Shiksha Shastra. Tagore's philosophy found translated into action when he established a high school, Shiksha Shastra, mainly for rural children in Sriniketan. This is apart the educational activities of the village welfare department. The school is organized as a miniature community, and students do everything that a village householder is expected to do on a small scale, but with greater efficiency and understanding. The literary education is not ignored, but more attention is given to building up of the complete human being. The extracurricular activities of the Shri Shastra included industry, which had weaving, carpentry, bookbinding, and leatherworks; gardening; health and sanitation; housecraft and general management; sports, games, and Bharati Balak activities; educational trips to places of interest; literary society, a monthly manuscript magazine; Shiksha Chhatra Bhavan. Educational activities at Sriniketan included a training school for teachers of village primary school, which is known as Shiksha Charcha. It provides instruction in both theory and practice for teachers. Practical training in one village craft is considered essential. After Tagore's death, a new department was added in Sriniketan. This was the Palli Shiksha Sadhana, a college of agriculture. It was designed primarily to equip rural youth with the knowledge of modern methods of farming. Besides instruction in basic sciences like chemistry, physics, mathematics, botany, and zoology, it also provides specialized courses in agronomy, goat keeping, agricultural economics, agricultural chemistry, horticulture, entomology, agricultural engineering, plant pathology, genetics, plant breeding, and farm management. Practical training in agriculture and dairy farms and fieldwork are an integral component of the course. To understand Tagore's contribution to education, one must glean through his various writings and educational experiments at Sriniketan. This is mainly due to the fact that Tagore did not write an educational treatise. We understand his thoughts on education evolved gradually with many experiments and his exposure to different schooling methods across the globe. He envisioned an education that was deeply rooted in one's immediate surroundings but connected to the cultures of the wider world, predicted upon pleasurable learning, individualized to the personality of the child. He felt that a curriculum should revolve organically around nature, with classes held in the open air, under the trees, to provide for a spontaneous appreciation of the fluidity of the plant and animal kingdom and seasonal change. Children sat on hand-woven mats beneath the trees, which they were allowed to climb and run between classes. Nature walks, excursions were a part of the curriculum, and students were encouraged to follow the life cycles of insects, birds, and plants. Class schedules were made flexible to allow for shifts in the weather, or special attention to natural phenomena and seasonal festivals were created for the children by Tagore. Tagore's philosophy of education placed equal importance on the aesthetic development of the sense along with the intellectual. To him, music, literature, art, dance and drama were very important aspects of daily school life. Without music and the fine arts, he wrote, a nation lacks its highest means of national self-expression, and the people remain inarticulate. Tagore was one of the first to support and bring together different forms of Indian dance. He helped revive folk dances and introduced dance forms from other parts of India, such as Manipuri, Kathak, Kathakali. He also supported modern dance. In keeping with his theory of subconscious learning, Tagore engaged the students in whatever he was writing or composing. The students were allowed access to the room where he read his new writings to teachers and critics, and they were encouraged to read out their own writings in special literary evenings. In teaching also, he believed in presenting difficult levels of literature, which the students might not fully grasp, but which would stimulate them. The students at Shantiniketan were encouraged to create their own publications and put out several illustrated magazines. The children were encouraged to follow their ideas in painting and drawing, and to draw inspirations from the many visiting artists and writers. The melting point of cultures, as Tagore had envisioned, it was Vishwa Bharati, a learning center where conflicting interests are minimized, where individuals work together in a common pursuit of truth and realize that artists in all parts of the world have created forms of beauty. Scientists discovered secrets of the universe. Philosophers solved the problems of existence. Saints made the truth of the spiritual world organic in their own lives, not merely for some particular race to which they belonged, but all humankind. To encourage mutuality, Tagore invited artists and scholars from other parts of India and the world to live together at Shantiniketan on a daily basis to share their cultures with Vishwa Bharati. The Constitution designated Vishwa Bharati as an Indian, Eastern and global cultural center. In terms of curriculum, Tagore advocated a different methodology of teaching. Rather than studying national cultures for the wars won and cultural dominance imposed, he advocated a teaching system that analyzed history and culture for the progress that had been made in breaking down social and religious barriers. Rabindranath Tagore is acknowledged as a living icon of the type of mutually and creatively exchanging that he advocated. Tagore's educational efforts were groundbreaking in many areas. He was one of the first in India to argue for a humane educational system that was in touch with the environment and aimed at overall development of the personality. Shantiniketan became a model for vernacular instruction and development of vernacular textbooks. It offered one of the earliest co-educational programs in South Asia. The establishment of Vishwabharati and Sriniketan led to pioneering efforts in many directions, including models for distinctively Indian higher education and mass education, as well as pan-Asian and global cultural exchange. In summing up Tagore's ideas on education, we can say that one characteristic feature that sets Rabindranath Tagore's educational theory apart is his approach to education as a poet. At Shantiniketan, he stated his goal was to create a poem in a medium other than words. It was this poetic vision that enabled him to fashion a scheme of education which was all-inclusive in nature and creative self-expression in learning climate congenial to global cultural exchange. Rabindranath Tagore stands with pioneering educators like Rousseau, Dewey, Montessori, and others who have striven to create non-authoritarian learning systems appropriate to the surroundings. Tagore's ideas of non-authoritarian learning and goals for education is best understood through his poem. Where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where knowledge is free. I invite you all to read this poem. Thank you.